think about the idea of potentially trading down into the draft. So only first round, but we're at pick 29. And so me and Nick are thinking, or going to discuss, should the Green Bay Packers trade out of 29 and go into the second round and maybe pick up a player, more players, more draft capital, or a combination of both? So I did want to highlight a couple of trade backs that we have done recently. The first one being the Kevin King trade back. So we were at 28 or 29, I believe. We were in the late 20s, and we traded
similar to now. We traded to the first pick of the second round, so pick 33 with the Browns.
We picked up a fourth rounder. We took Kevin King with that, and then in the fourth we took Vince Beagle, who he didn't really pan out, but anyways. And then the other trade down, which was actually a really good move by Goot. This was when we traded out of, I believe it was 13 or 14. It was in the teens. Traded down with the Saints, picked up a future first rounder in the next year's draft. They took Marcus Davenport. And then we didn't hold on to the pick. We traded back up, but we'll talk about that later. So we've traded down a couple times recently. We've traded down in the mid rounds a few times. Nick, do you think the Green Bay Packers should trade down?
I think the Packers should definitely think about trading down. It'll obviously come down to how the draft's going when we get around the late 20s and closer to the Packers at 29. But there's obviously some very, very good players in this year's draft that would be great on the Packers, but they're not going to last at 29. So then when you look at players who are reasonable for the Packers, you think these people are going to be there at 29, but hey, I think we could get them a little later. And that's when we start thinking about trading down, not too far down, just maybe no more than 10 picks, 5 to 10 picks, just get early second round where we can still get one of those players that we could have got at 29, but we think they'll still be there maybe around 35, 36, 37. And it could definitely be an option for the Packers on draft day, but it won't be anything that's done ahead of time. Usually trade downs aren't done ahead of time unless someone's trading up really high, which we've seen with the 49ers and the Eagles switching around in this year's draft. So, yeah, I think the Packers might end up trading down. It'll depend if they believe that their guy that they have is still available and they think he'll still be available. And it depends how long, because it's always risky to trade down when you're going for a guy could be taken within those 5 to 10 picks. That's 5 or 10 players that are going to go off the board.
Interesting. So, yeah, I'm with you. If the board falls where there's like, say, 4 or 5 guys that they're comfortable taking, and just for an example, let's say a few of those guys are Tevin Jenkins, De'Ami Brown, Terrace Marshall, a few other names you could throw in there too. Asante Samuel Jr., maybe Greg Newsome, guys they've met with, and positions of need. If there's like 5 or 6 of those guys that they have as a grade 1 player, and they're not super high on one over the other, they may say, all right, we're going to trade down, maybe pick an extra 4th, an extra 5th, and we're going to take our guy or one of these guys in the second round and basically just get more draft capital. And I like that idea. Now, when we did it for Kevin King, it didn't really work out, right? Because, Vince Beagle never really turned out to be great, but the Packers have drafted really well in the mid to later rounds in the past. I mean, we got David Bakhtiari in the 4th. We got Blake Martinez in the 4th. We've gotten Sitton, Lang. We've gotten those guys later in the draft. If we have more chances to get guys like them who maybe they aren't high prospects, but we can develop them because we develop players pretty well, I like that idea. One kind of big negative, though, that I see is the 5th-year option with the first round. So for those that don't know, when you take a guy in the first round, that 4th year or after their 4th year, there's a player option, and basically the team has the option to keep him on for another year, and so they're still under the cost control by the team, and it's not as inexpensive of the first couple of years, but it's still pretty cheap for what you can get, or what they should get if they turn out to be good.
Yeah, and going off that 5th-year option, So obviously that's very important when you draft a guy who's really good in their first 4 years and you want to keep him another year cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But with this trading down just 5 to 10 picks, we'll get another maybe a 4th and 6th round, and that's another whole 2 players. Like, so that's
Yeah.
not one more year. That's more players. That's 2 more people that are less likely to pan out, but could pan out and be very good players. We've had really
Yeah.
good luck in the past with the 4th round, and I think we can get a 4th round and then a future 5th or 6th rounder for that 29th overall pick. And so going back to that 5th year, like, yeah, it's obviously very important for good players, but
Mm-hmm.
there's no guarantee, even this high in the draft, early 2nd round or late 1st round where you get the 5th year, there's no guarantee that player will pan out. I mean, you just look at all the drafts, they're just
There's a
many
lot of
people aren't
guys that
lasting all 5 years as like a top player that are deserving that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's a chance we're losing. Well, we would be losing that 5th year option, but I like the idea of getting a whole nother 2 players in return.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like it too. And like I mentioned earlier, when we traded down with the Saints, we got an extra first. We got an extra first from moving to the end of the 1st round. And then we did trade back up. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, we won those trades. But you can get some pretty good stuff.
It also depends, like, who we're trading with. Like, they might want a player who's going to be gone at 30,
Yeah.
and they might, like, it depends how desperate they are. Like, are we the ones trading down, or are they more the ones trading up? You know what I mean?
Like, are they calling us, or are we, you know, trying
Exactly.
to
Like, are they
move
calling us
down?
like, hey, I need that 29th pick. I'm willing to give you a
Yeah,
2nd rounder next year, you know? Like,
exactly.
or the 1st rounder in the case with the Saints.
And it just depends, like, you know, if, say, the Miami Dolphins or the San Francisco 49ers, they have a guy who's there at 29, and they're like, you know, we have a top 15 grade on this guy. I don't know how much longer he's going to be available. They might try to trade up, and there could be multiple teams trading up too. There's obviously, I mean, if you think of Jordan Love, there's multiple teams that were interested in taking him at the end of the 1st. That's why we had to trade up. And it was the I forget who exactly we traded with, but when we traded up for Love, the team that traded down, they got a couple extra 4th rounders. Now, again, not every 4th rounder pans out, but it's just another chance at getting a really cheap guy who can
a whole nother player
fill depth for your roster. So it's an interesting thought. It just depends how the board falls, I think, really at the end of the day for trading down. If there's 5 guys they like and they're at their pick, they may say, hey, we'll get one of these guys in 10 picks most likely. Let's just trade down. So I'd be fine with that. But yeah, I'm with you. No later than like pick 38, 39. Yeah. Don't go more than 10 picks down.
You don't want to get risky. You don't want to start being like, oh, I'm sure he'll be there, because then you could really screw up. So
yeah,
you want to make sure, like, all right, I have a list of 4 or 5 guys, and I am 100% positive that at least one of them are going to be there. So let's trade down. Let's get a couple extra picks.
I'm with you. So now